Well, hello everybody. My name is Nolan Willis. Um, I've been hearing about what's going on in Texas. I have a lot of friends and family in Texas, and actually, my wife is from Texas. I lived in Texas for 5 years, and right now I live in Alaska. This is where I'm from. This is where I grew up, and so I know a few things about cold weather. I've been hearing about the Texas blackouts, the problems, the lack of heat, the lack of electricity. And, these are things that some of us have prepared for up here, including us. And I just want to kind of go over some things to maybe help people out a bit. Some of this is going to be a little bit late to do. I'm sorry. The only thing I can say is let this scenario be a lesson and prepare accordingly. A lot of people say, well, we haven't ever had any temperatures this cold. And I'm like, well, yeah, you haven't, but now you have. And you never know. It could happen again. I mean, I saw some pretty cold temperatures when I lived down there during my 5-year times that I did not think that I would ever see in a place like Texas. So without too much further background information, I just want to kind of go over some things here. I made a little bit of a list here, and just some things off the top of my head. The first is that if you got pipes in your crawl space or attic, insulate them, especially if you've got poor insulation in your crawl space in the attic like most houses in the South do. Up here in the North, where I live, we encapsulate and insulate our crawl space. A lot of our attics have got blown insulation and bats and everything else, and sometimes there's spray foam around the joists and other things to try to keep cold air from coming in. I have never seen any of that in the South. So probably the cheapest way you could probably try to prevent pipes from breaking in the event that you totally lose power, totally lose heat, insulate the pipes. Get some pipe insulation, wrap them up. Get some of that foam. It's split down the side. You pull the adhesive tape off and you put it on the pipe. Make sure you cover everything up. If you don't need to get too crazy with it. The idea is to kind of keep the heat inside the pipes, so that in the event that you do lose power, you can crack your valves open, and the water that flows to the pipes, enough heat stays in the pipes to prevent freezing before it flows through. Otherwise, you could lose too much heat to the environment and you could freeze up. Alternatively, if you're interested in saving energy long term, might be a good idea to look at doing a better job of insulating your crawl space or attic. So another thing to keep in mind here, backup heating sources. You can go to hardware stores, you can go to Lowe's, you can go to Home Depot. Of course, they're probably out now, but assuming they're not in the future, pick up a kerosene heater or two. Or pick up a propane heater. Most of these things, if you are careful, you take proper precautions, you can use them indoors. This is, of course, assuming you don't have a wood stove or something else that you can use for heat in the event that you need it. So, if you're going to use a kerosene heater, you want to get the 1K kerosene. It's deodorized. It doesn't produce a bunch of smoke and stuff. They don't require electricity normally. You just basically light a wick and adjust it, and it produces heat. Now, you're going to want to make sure that you maybe crack a window open or something. Make sure you get some airflow. You don't want to suffocate or die of carbon monoxide poisoning. Totally unrelated to anything I just described. I've suffered from carbon monoxide poisoning before. I'm telling you, it's no fun. So don't go there. Just be careful. Be smart. Another thing to keep in mind here, sorry to pick my paper up. Make sure you have a 5-gallon bucket and some plastic bags ready. I saw some pictures on the internet, some toilets with some icicles hanging off of them. Those things ain't going to flush. So, yeah, you can always set it outside when you're done. But make sure you have a backup plan. In the event that you lose water, you'll lose the ability to flush your toilet. You don't want that sitting around, especially if the power is going to be out for several days. That is unsanitary. Also, make sure you have things like wipes and hand sanitizer and other things on hand. Also, cordless tools. Most people I know have, DeWalt, Ryobi, whatever else, Makita, Milwaukee, cordless tools. Make sure that you keep them with full batteries. A lot of times you can pull a light out or something. Some of the more advanced tool sets, they even have power inverters that you can plug into them. But you want to make sure your tools are ready to go in the event that you need to do something. You never know when you might have to. You might have to do some work. Something might break. You might have to do a quick repair job in a pinch. But it's a good idea to keep those charged up so that when you have problems, you have at least another tool in your bag, literally, to do something about it. This one's more on the technical side of things. If you have computers and, you know, routers, internet stuff, modems, you probably want to invest in getting an uninterruptible power supply. And they got a backup battery in them. They're fairly inexpensive now. Go ahead and get the biggest one you're willing to pay money for, and plug your computer stuff into it. That way, when the power goes out, you know, you don't just cold stop your computer. You want to be able to put the thing down gracefully. You don't want to be able to make it go hibernate, or you want to shut it down nicely. You can do that rather than having the thing shut down at the worst possible time. You lose data. You end up with weird errors and problems later on. You don't know what caused them. But also another thing that it helps you do is it keeps things like routers and modems working. And, you know, having lived in East Texas and having family that's there, one thing that I found that's always a problem out there is cell coverage. You know, there's always there are dead spots all over the country, and you know, a lot of times you can get around that with Wi-Fi calling if your provider supports it, but you can't do that if you don't have internet. So you want to make sure your internet's working. It's your link to the outside world. Keep it running. Get a UPS. Might be a little annoying if you have a dog, because when the power goes out, those things beep. I think sometimes you can silence the alarm. I don't know. I haven't been able to do it, but you know, at least you got internet or something like that. Or you can get a backup power bank or something and plug into that. But the idea is you want to have a few hours that you can use to, you know, tell family members you're okay, communicate with the outside world, get notifications, etc. You're going to find a lot of that probably to be somewhat useful. This is something my wife learned during Hurricane Katrina when she was in Florida. She was in college in Florida. Hurricane Katrina started, and she realized that she couldn't find any place to get gas that was anywhere nearby. She had to drive for quite a while to put fuel in her car, and that kind of scared her. Till this day, she's like, Nolan, we need to get gas. I'm like, honey, we got half a tank. And she's like, I don't care. We need gas. So, you know, she's probably right about that. I'm probably a little bit too lax about that. But the idea, and the other thing I found too, is that November 30th, 2018, we had a big earthquake up here. It took out power. It took out all sorts of things for a while. It didn't take it out for days. Took it out for most of a day. But nevertheless, the things that go offline first are the gas stations, because they don't have any backup power systems. If they don't have backup power systems, they don't have pumps. If they don't have pumps, you don't get fuel. So you get these big long lines at the handful of gas stations that do have pumps that work, and they run out of fuel before anyone else does. Not good. So make sure you got fuel in your car, especially if you see something coming. You see a storm coming, go gas up your car. Don't take a chance on that if you can help it. Generators. Okay, so here's where I'm probably going to spend a little more time explaining things, because this is actually what I originally wanted to do the video about, but then I realized there's a lot of other things I could cover too that could be helpful, that are actually probably more relevant to average people than homeowners that might have a little extra cash or might want to be a little more prepared about things. So, generators. Don't ever underestimate the utility of having a few hundred watts, maybe even 1,000 watts of power that you can use to power up anything. Easiest way to do that, I'm going to switch the camera around here so you can see. I'm in the garage. I got a little suitcase generator right here. This is an old thing. Early 90s, I think. It's like a 650 watt generator. Usually starts on the first or second crank. Get something. You can probably pick something like this up secondhand. But more commonly, you can probably get these little suitcase Honda inverter generators that actually weigh less than this thing does and can put out about almost 4 times as much power. So I'd recommend getting one of those. They can typically last about 8 hours on a tank of fuel. You're going to want to have extra fuel. Make sure you get extension cords and adapters. Do not run this thing inside your house. That is how you get carbon monoxide poisoning, and that's bad. So get some cords, get some adapters. You can plug in heaters, you can plug in refrigerators, whatever else, whatever you need. It can be really handy. And is it convenient? Not really. But if you don't have anything else, it's great. So, seeing as I normally use this thing for camping applications, don't really use it as a backup, we're going to talk about something else here. This is the backup system, the backup power system for our house. Now, we bought the house. This was already installed, but I found some deficiencies, so I had to correct them. So basically, what you got here is you have the ability to switch between the feed from your meter base, which is outside your house, or from the utility, or, and I'm going to be careful, I don't want to stick my finger clear inside the box, or you can switch to your generator, and this enables you to switch power sources. It allows you to have an alternate power source. This was installed after the house was built. Right here I have, I want to say it's an NEMA L1430P. It's like a twist lock cord. I actually made this cord, but you know, it's a standard plug you can get at any hardware store. I actually don't recommend, you know, this is inside the garage, and I have the ability to run this cord under the door. If you're going to install this outside, especially in the Texas sun, I do not recommend coiling up the cord like this. In fact, I wouldn't even recommend doing this in Alaska unless you can keep it indoors under a carport or someplace where it's not going to get beat down by the sun or the weather. But, you know, you can get these little power inlet plugs that sit below, and you can run a cord to that and keep the cord coiled up by your generator. So in the event of a power outage, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take the cord, you're going to want to hook it up to your generator, and you're going to want to fire up your generator. I'll get to that here in a minute. I'm not going to fire up my generator because, you know, I don't want to do that right now. But you're going to want to fire up your generator and let it warm up a bit. Don't just stick a load on it. You probably have to let it warm up a bit before you take the choke off. And once you've done that, then you can flip this handle. I'm not going to do is I want to put the lights out, but you know, it's on for line. This is utility, on for generator. So however it's rigged up, you flip it over. And another thing you're going to want to do, and this is important, you have a limited power supply from your generator. You can only deliver, I want to say, my generator is like a 4 kW generator, so less than 30 amps for sure. And I can't, I'm an electrical engineer, and I could do better than that, but I don't want to do the math in my head right now. The point is, you can't, let's see here. May as well try it here. So it's 240 times 10 is 2400 times 248. So yeah, maybe 20 amps out of that generator. So notice if you look at the panel here, I've got things like the kitchen range and the dryer and other things that can be big loads. And you're thinking, really? Yeah, sorry, this is Alaska. Down East Texas, you got things like air conditioning and heat pumps and stuff that's going to draw 30 or 40 amps on, and maybe way higher than that on inrush. And it's going to be drawing 25 or 30 amps the entire time it's running. And that's just for one of them. And if you kick two of them out at the same time, well, you're going to be in the dark again. So what you're going to want to do is go over to the breakers. You're going to want to identify whichever breakers you can live without, and think about what you can live without and shut them off. You're probably going to want to shut your heat pumps off. Unless it just gets dreadfully cold in your house. And there's other ways to heat it. There's electric heaters and stuff you can use too. I'll get to that here in a minute. You're going to want to shut them off so you don't put yourself in the dark again. And once you've done that, then you can transfer over. Something else to note that's very important if you have a gasoline generator, and I can't overstate this. Gasoline in particular, does not like being stored for long periods of time. And especially if you live in the lower 48, as we like to call that place, you guys have this substance in your fuel, an utter abomination. It's called ethanol. Some of you guys know what I mean. You have anywhere from about 10 to 15% ethanol content in your fuel, depending on where you live. And I hated that. It played havoc with my truck, my mid-90s Ford truck when I lived down there. So what I recommend, this is a must, you're going to have to get fuel stabilizer. We don't have ethanol up here because we have a different source of fuel than most people do. But I still have fuel stabilizer to keep the fuel fresh. Well, some modicum of fresh for several months to a year. A lot of times they say you can store fuel up to 3 years of this stuff. I don't know. I haven't actually tried storing stuff up to that long. Oh, it says up to 24 months. Okay, I stand corrected. But you're gonna want to get some of this. Another thing too is you're gonna want to keep your fuel tank on your generator. This thing right here, you're gonna want to keep it as full as you can, and you're gonna want to periodically run it. Now, something else to note here too is this is an example of a older late 80s, early 90s Honda generator. When you're test running it, you don't want to shut it off by just flipping the kill switch. You want to shut it off by shutting the fuel off. What that lets you do is it lets you run the gas that's in the carburetor out. So the carburetor is bone dry when the engine runs out, and it doesn't go sour and leave a coating of varnish that clogs up your carburetor and makes the engine harder to start when you need the generator 5 years from now. Another thing too is you're going to want to keep spare fuel on hand. Jerry jugs are usually the best way you can do that. You're going to want to have fuel stabilizer in that too. So there's some other options for transfer switches. That's this thing right here. There are some that is basically like a little switch panel you put next to your main panel, and they have like anywhere from 6 to 8 switches to switch individual circuits. That's another alternative too. It might be the only one that your county, your city code inspector will approve. Like I say, I'm going to say always follow the local ordinances, whatever you do. And they differ. We can get away with more up here because Eagle River, Alaska, there's not really a lot of code enforcement. By the way, this isn't unsafe. It's just some may not approve of it. But for what we're doing, it's fine. And yeah, another thing too, there are options for installing standby generators too. You know, if you're really concerned and you got a lot of money, you want to throw out a solution, you can always invest in a generating system that relies on an automatic generator and a transfer switch. It's going to run you $5 or $6 grand, and that's not including the propane tank that you're probably going to want to have, because I'm hearing that out there in Texas, one of the problems is the constrained supply of natural gas. We haven't had that problem up here even during the earthquakes. A big reason why is because we designed all of our oil wells and all of our handling equipment to work in the Arctic. We have to do that so we can survive. It's the reason why we have the lights on right now when it could be, any temperature pretty much outside. We have things like chemical injection to prevent freezing of the lines coming out of the wellheads. We got supplementary heat. We bury the lines. Anything that could freeze, we buried a lot deeper. If you guys have any interest at all in improving the situation, making sure this doesn't happen again, and you have any influence at all, try to talk to the people in charge. Say, hey, look, why don't you take some lessons from the folks in places like Alaska, North Dakota, Minnesota? We have a lot of experience we could offer. So I don't want to belabor this too much, but those are just some pointers I can think of that might be helpful. Like I said, a lot of it's not going to be helpful now. I'm sorry. But, it might save you the next time around. Then again, if you can do any of this now, great. More power to you. But with that said, I wish you all well. I wish things would work out better for you.